Here on this channel, I've been banging the drum on how important diversification is for a stable and solid portfolio that can weather every crisis. And that's why today we're gonna take a look into another non-cyclical, strong performer to perfectly add to your portfolio and even bring quite a bit of significant performance, because that one has been outperforming even the S&P 500 in recent crises. So stay tuned, we're jumping right in. Hello and welcome to another video by HKCM Global. My name is Joe, and as just mentioned, I think diversification is super important for a stable portfolio. And diversification does not mean owning several different altcoins, but also being diversified across certain sectors. That's why, for example, today I brought you a non-cyclical company that is a brilliant addition to every single portfolio, at least in my mind, and that is a branch of the economy that usually is regarded as not so sexy, not so interesting as, for example, tech stocks, or maybe even as of recently, defense stocks. Also, oil companies are usually rather interesting for most investors. But the insurance business is usually by many young investors especially disregarded as just boring and not that interesting at all. However, you might maybe have to rethink that prejudice, because today I brought you the Travelers Company, and no, the Travelers Company has nothing to do with travel at all. Travelers is one of the biggest insurance companies throughout the United States, and as such, they pull their biggest chunk of revenue out of business insurances. So that's over 50%, roughly over 50% that they pull out of business insurances. And the other huge chunk is personal insurances, and the rest is just a negligible amount of specialty insurances. So mostly business insurances and personal insurances. And of course, in all fairness, if the economy really comes crashing down, surely a company like this one also will be affected, as many businesses go broke and bust. Of course, also their policies will not be paid for anymore, and in such a case, also a company like the Travelers will get affected. But here is where it really gets interesting, because talking about exactly such a crisis, I want to show you something. So if you just come with me on a little travel back in time, all the way back to the year 2007, 2008, GFC, the great financial crisis. What I would want to show you is the following here. So you can see here, the Travelers stock TRV, by the way, had its peak back in May of 2007, and then ever since the GFC unfolded. And how long did it take from the low peak here? Oh, well, how long did it take basically from the top up until the, again, climbing over that set price level by TRV? And you can see here that roughly by the time of January 2011, so early 2011, we were already back up ahead over the most recent high before the unfolding of the crisis. Is that good? Is that bad? Hard to tell without a reference. That's why I also brought the S&P 500 here. Same here, 2007, the peak. And how long did we take to again overtake those price levels? We took all the way to the mid of 2013. So had you on top of the market before the crisis hit, put your money in, first of all, the Travelers and also in the S&P 500, you would have had to wait 2.5 years longer to reach the break even in the S&P 500 compared to the Travelers Company. That is quite marvelous for such a defensive and conservative company as the Travelers. So that's why I'm really awestruck by such a performance that the Travelers here pulled off. And it doesn't stop there, because if we move to our most current imminent outlook here for the Travelers Company, you can see that even, for example, here in the last 1.5 years, we have pulled off a performance of 75%. And I remind you, that's a super conservative company. 75% does even get better. So let's maybe, for example, jump in here to the very low peak. You can see here, COVID crash, hugely affected, as just mentioned. If the economy comes crashing down, a company like the Travelers will not be spared totally. But again here, from the low peak of the COVID crash up until today's level, 260% of performance. And by the way, in contrast to many of those high flyer tech stocks, they also paid a dividend all the way through at roughly, I mean, it's not a huge dividend, but roughly 2% of a dividend on top of that great performance that you got here. And you also got a super conservative company. That's the dream, right? If you are trying to diversify your portfolio and reduce risk, that's the dream, man. And if you are watching here and you are a high-risk crypto bro, I hope I can maybe give you a little bit of a taste for such a company to also maybe add to your portfolio and bring a little bit of diversification and a little bit of more stability into the violent times that we are currently in. And by the way, if you like to learn more about such stable and solid companies, that might also be a good idea to add to your portfolio. Down there in the description, there's a link taking you to our website where we offer various different packages. We analyze 200 markets on a daily basis. And we, as one of the leading financial analytics company out of Central Europe, we provide daily updates, we provide push notifications, we provide entries and exits to our model portfolio. So if that is of interest to you, link down there in the description taking you to our offer. But back to the video here. And our outlook then for the Travelers company is maybe the most important thing. That's why you probably came here. And you can see that overall, we are expecting that after this 1, 2, 3, 4 waves upward structure so far, we conclude that we are currently not yet at the end of that move, but we are rather in the first wave. Well, we have already completed the first wave of this final 5th wave, and we are currently in the wave 2 to unfold, which of course will be followed by another wave 3 upward structure, wave 4 corrective pattern, wave 5 final upwards move, before we would then conclude the final overreaching wave 5 of the wave 1, and only then would we see a huge correction to come into that stock and maybe stick with us for a longer time. So speaking about that longer outlook, then what is our expectation from here onward? As just mentioned, we are currently in the unfolding of the wave 2, and that's why I also brought for you here the 2-hour chart. Right here we've been on the 1-day chart, so every single candle here representing 1 day of trading. Here we have a 2-hour chart, so every single candle representing 2 hours of trading. And here you also see this wave 1 top that I just showed you here, wave 1 top from October of 2024. Here we conclude that we have ever since been in so far an A, B correction, and the, of course, C wave will follow from here onward. And currently we are very, very high up extended already for such a B wave. So this resistance here at $287.26 will be the last chance for this B wave to really turn to pivot and to come back down into our target zone here for this overreaching wave 2. And as we always try to be, and as we always aim to be super transparent with you, here the underlying market structure is not 100% clear. So that's why we already estimated here an alternative scenario at a probability of 40%. That is not to be disregarded. I mean, as of now, still we have our clear primary scenario with another sell-off here to occur in our target zone for the final wave 2 here. But we also have this alternative here on the table with the wave 2 in our alternative count already being in here in the low of 9th of April this year. And this would then mean that we would already see here an alternative wave 3 to follow through from here onwards. So in between those current levels from 271.86 up until 287.26, that really is the deciding zone where it will be battled out between the bulls and the bears, and where we will see if we go straight through and we would have to adapt our primary scenario, or if our primary scenario will perfectly play out. And if our primary scenario is to play out as expected here, and for this I might maybe also go back to the overreaching chart, because if our primary scenario is to be unfolded like we expect here, this would take us all the way back to price levels that we have seen over a year back already. So that will be a hugely interesting and attractive entry zone for me personally to add a bit more of the Travelers to my portfolio, because as you just saw, super solid company, great performance in crises. And I don't know about you, but I have the feeling that there is quite a significant crisis not too far up on the horizon. And so if you would like your portfolio to be protected in such rough and violent times that might be up ahead, as mentioned before, down there in the description, link taking you to our analysis. Because in times of market turmoil, nothing is as important as having an analysis that you trust and that gives you guidance and helps you just sleep better when the market is all in a huge turmoil and just storms everywhere left and right. So that's basically it for today. Hope you found it valuable. If so, don't forget to turn on the bell notification after you just subscribe, because we are pushing out here free value multiple times a week. And well, it just does not cost you anything other than just putting on the bell notification after the subscribe button. And if you also like to not just watch videos, but also read like short news articles and inspirational quotes, Instagram and X channel also linked down there below in the description if that is of interest to you. I'd love to see you there as well. And up until the next one, take care. Bye bye.